Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today's webinar. We are going to get started in just 1 minute. All right. Thank you all for joining today's webinar. My name is Courtney Bettle, and I'm the Director of Financial Capability with Cash Campaign of Maryland. Today's webinar is all about credit, and so we're going to talk very broadly about the basics of credit and how credit scores work. Feel free to drop questions as we go along in the chat box. My colleague Mark is on the line monitoring the chat box, so if there's any questions that I miss, Mark, if you could flag those for me. We are keeping everyone's video and microphones muted to preserve the recording quality. And we also are going to be recording this webinar as well. So I am going to start that recording now. All right. Again, my name is Courtney Bettle. I'm the Director of Financial Capability with Cash Campaign of Maryland, and I'm excited to be with you today. This webinar will last about 30 to 40 minutes, depending on the number of questions that we have. Feel free to drop those questions in the chat box as we go along. So first, just a little bit about Cash Campaign of Maryland. We are a nonprofit. We work throughout the state of Maryland, and we offer a series of programs and support to other organizations, as well as leading policy and advocacy efforts in an effort to promote financial or economic advancement for low and moderate income families across the state. Just a brief overview of the services that we offer. We offer free tax preparation services. So if you earned $56,000 or less in 2019, you qualify for our free tax preparation services. Tax season has been extended through July 15th. So if you still need help getting your taxes done, you can visit the homepage of our website. We are doing taxes remotely at this time. We also offer lots of financial education workshops like this one. You can visit our website, mdcashacademy.org, and check out the calendar of all the workshops that we've got going on. We update that list regularly and are always adding new workshops. We also provide access to benefits screening, which helps you identify if you're eligible for public assistance to help you get through the month or the year. So things like food stamps or energy assistance, prescription drug assistance, tax credits you might be eligible for. This program, as well as all of our programs that are direct to clients, are free. We also offer a financial coaching program, and I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of this presentation. But just keeping this in mind as you go through the presentation, if there are questions that you have that are specific to your individual circumstances and you think, man, it would be really nice to have someone help me work through this and come up with a plan, financial coaching would be a great fit for you. And then lastly, we offer an annual financial fitness fair called Money Power Day. We are working on identifying ways that we can move that program virtually so that we can offer it to you all later this year. For more information about all of these programs and services, you can visit our website at cashmd.org. All right, so what are we going to do today? We're going to talk basic, what is credit and why does it matter? We're going to talk a little bit about credit reports, how to get one, how to read one. We'll talk about credit scores and how to rock your credit score or boost your credit score. And then we'll talk about some tips and tools to improve and maintain your credit. So what are some of the things that you think of when you hear the word credit? And you can feel free to drop those in the chat box right now. All right, someone says bad credit means high car insurance. Yeah. Jennifer, if you can type your question in the chat box or statement in the chat box. Someone else says they feel like it's a way to determine who gets what. Yeah. So credit is really complex and it can mean a lot of different things. When we're talking about credit today, we specifically are referring to the ability to obtain a good or a service before you've actually provided the payment. So sometimes people, when they use the word credit, they're talking about a credit score, or they might be talking about a credit report. But the term credit specifically is about the ability to have something today, but that you're not putting up all the money for today. So think about when you buy a car and you put a down payment down maybe, but then you're paying those monthly payments. You get to drive around that car today like you own it, and you sort of do own it, but you are still paying back the amount for that car over time. Same with a mortgage. Same when you use a credit card. So it's about having something today, and it's really based on this relationship of trust. Trust that the person that's lending you the money or providing you that good or that service or that item is going to get all of their money back, even though they're providing you with that good or service in the future or ahead of time. So when lenders are thinking about credit, they've got one big question in mind. Will I get this money back? And they're making loan decisions based on information that they find in your credit history to determine whether or not you're approved for that loan, the interest rate that's going to be associated with the loan, maybe some of the other terms and conditions that are around that loan. And it's all based on trying to get a sense of, is this person going to be able to repay me the loan that they've been provided? So why is credit important? Someone had mentioned things, something about car insurance. And yeah, credit actually determines a lot of how much we pay and what we have access to in life. So your credit score determines the interest rate you pay. It determines the amount of a down payment that you have to pay. It even determines the options that are available for you in terms of products that you can purchase. And sometimes credit scores are connected with different rewards, particularly when we talk about credit cards that are available to you. So why is credit important? Well, some folks really want to make sure they don't like the idea of credit. They'd like to live a credit-free life. And that I think is a very personal decision at Cash. We don't take a particularly strong view about whether or not you should or should not have a credit card or access to credit broadly. We take a more nuanced approach. We believe that credit and access to credit is an asset, and that for most people, at least having a strong credit profile is really important because it does impact the cost that you pay for things, even if you live in a cash economy, even if you never take out a loan. So things like your ability to rent an apartment, or as someone mentioned earlier, auto insurance rates. In Maryland, up to 30% of your auto insurance rate can be determined by your credit score alone. It also impacts things like your ability to buy a car or a house or finance your future education. So we do believe that credit is important regardless of whether or not you think you want to take out a loan. All right, I have a couple questions in the chat that I'm going to try to address, or I might hold them because I'll address them later. So someone is asking if unpaid medical bills will bring down credit. And the answer is possibly, and I'll talk a little bit about when they do impact your credit as we get a little later in the presentation. And then someone is also asking a question specifically about the loss of a home after being laid off and I guess having barriers to credit. And so for that question, I would say that is something that you will want to connect with one of our financial coaches about. Just so they can look at your particular situation and give you some really good advice about how to move forward. I will later on in the presentation talk about how long negative items stay on your credit report so that you can be aware of those timelines and timeframes. All right, so just a very brief history of credit reporting. Basically, the summary of this slide is that credit reporting is actually relatively new. Prior to the 1950s and 1960s, your credit and your ability to get access to loans was often just based on your reputation in the community. Bankers knew you personally, or they knew someone you were related to, and sort of based on your word and your reputation and references would determine if you could get access to credit. In the 1970s, the Fair Credit Reporting Act was introduced, the big three credit reporting agencies were established, and along with those in the 90s, more credit protections were included in that law to try to give consumers more protections and sort of instill more fairness into the process. So what are these credit reporting agencies? So their job is to gather and organize pertinent information about you and your credit history. There are actually a lot of different agencies that collect credit history. They do not all contain identical information, and not all of them are actually easily public to you. And we'll talk about the ones that are consumer facing in a minute. And I do see a chat in the box about why is credit score connected to car insurance rates, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. So the three main credit reporting bureaus, and you've probably heard of them, are TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax. Again, these are not the only credit reporting bureaus, but they are the three main consumer-facing credit reporting agencies. This is kind of what a credit report will look like. If you've ever pulled your credit report, you know that it can be many, many pages and have lots of jargon and codes on there and be a little difficult to read. Our cash coaching program that's available to you and that's free to access will offer you an opportunity to pull your credit report, review your score, and have someone walk you through it. So I'll talk a little bit about the elements that are on a credit report, but to really understand your credit report, I think it's important for you to meet with someone one-on-one. So the credit report is compiled by the credit reporting bureaus. So lenders, credit card companies actually send information to TransUnion and Equifax and Experian. And they include a person's history of the amount of debt that they've taken out, their borrowing behavior, the timeliness or lateness of payments, the types of loans, and what eventually happened with that debt as well. So here's what you'll find on your credit report, and also what you won't find on your credit report. So all credit reports include personal identifying information. So you'll find your name, previous names that you may have used to, aliases, your social security number, hopefully your current address, or potentially past addresses as well. Account information, which is known as trade lines. So credit cards that you've taken out, loans that you've, lines of credit, those will all be on your credit report. Inquiries, which is who has pulled your credit report, will also be there. And in a minute, I'll talk about exactly the difference between hard and soft pulls or inquiries on your report. Items that have gone in collections that will be on there, and accounts that are in poor standing. Certain public records will appear on your credit report as well. Creditors' contact information too. What will not be on your credit report is your credit score, your age, your salary, the amount of money you have in a checking or a savings account, investment products. So those sorts of things are actually not on your credit report. If you do get a credit report that does have a credit score associated with it, and you are pulling that yourself, know that there's sometimes a fee associated with getting a credit score on your credit report. So how long does information stay on your credit report? Well, the good news is that accounts that are in good standing, they actually stay on your report forever. Accounts that are delinquent or past due, 30, 60, 90 days or more, Those will stay in there on there about 7 years. Bankruptcy will stay on your credit report, depending on the chapter that you file, between 7 and 10 years. And student loan information actually stays on your credit report forever, regardless of whether or not it's in good or bad standing or whatever happened to it. When it comes to credit scores, and we'll get into this in a few minutes in more detail, just because the information stays on your credit report forever doesn't mean it's going to have the same impact on your financial life or your credit score for that time. And we'll go into that in a minute. So who can see your credit report? So any person that is interested in providing you a line of credit or financing options can actually access your credit report. And this actually includes things that you may not have applied for. So if you've ever gotten a pre-approved credit card offer in the mail, those folks were able to look at your credit report and are offering you that based on what they saw. Landlords can pull your credit report when they're trying to determine if they want to rent an apartment to you. And an important note is that employers, this is a specific law in Maryland, employers in Maryland can actually not pull your credit report anymore unless you are in a couple of very narrow jobs. So if you're applying for a job at at a social service agency or some other job, they can't pull your credit report. But if your role involves finances or security, like a public safety job, then those employers do have special accommodations to be able to pull your credit for employment related purposes. All right, so let's talk about the distinction between hard and soft inquiries and why this is important. So the inquiry section of your credit report is often overlooked. It's not sometimes what people consider the most interesting information, but I would argue it's one of the most important sections of the credit report because this tells you who is looking at your credit report. And if someone is looking at your credit report, you want to know about it because if it's someone that you have not explicitly given permission to, it could be a place to flag fraud for the first time. So this is a true personal story of mine. A couple of years ago, I was pulling my credit report just to look it over, and I noticed that earlier in the month, a cell phone company had pulled my credit report, and I had not been shopping for a cell phone. I noticed that the address was in Florida, and I don't live in Florida. And when I called the company up, they told me that 9 cell phones had been opened up in my name in the last 2 weeks. And I hadn't gotten a bill. I didn't get a call from a collections agency. The only reason I knew is because it was in the inquiry section of my credit report. And so it's a way to really early on spot identity theft, the inquiry section. So don't overlook it. The other thing you might have heard about pulling or checking your credit report is that there's a myth out there that if you pull your credit report, it hurts your credit score. And that is not necessarily true. So a hard inquiry or a hard credit report pull is when you're shopping for credit and a lender runs your credit score because you're actively applying for a line of credit or financing. So if you're shopping for a mortgage, shopping for a car loan, those are considered hard inquiries because you are shopping for credit. Hard inquiries do temporarily lower your credit score. And actually, this slide should be updated. They actually stay on the report for only about a year now, and those hard inquiries are visible to lenders. And the reason they have an impact on your credit score is because if someone has a lot of inquiries, it means that they're shopping for a lot of credit. And so shopping for a lot of credit makes lenders wonder, why does this person need access to so much credit right now? Maybe they're short on cash, and so it's seen as maybe a risk. It's not something to worry about too much if you're shopping for a car loan or shopping for a mortgage, and I'll talk a little bit about how to minimize the impact on your credit score in just a minute. But that is a hard inquiry. It's different from a soft inquiry, and a soft inquiry is when your credit report is pulled for purposes other than applying for credit. So when you pull your own credit report, for your personal information so that you can monitor your credit report, that's considered a soft inquiry. When Cash Campaign of Maryland or
Hello,
another
I lost you.
education-related organization pulls your credit, that is also considered a soft inquiry because it's for educational purposes. It's not for lending purposes. When your car insurance company pulls your credit to reset your auto insurance rates, those are also considered soft inquiries because you're not actively shopping for credit. It's for those other information. So those will appear on your credit report. They're not going to be visible to other lenders, and they will have no impact on your credit score. And so we talked a little about these examples of hard and soft inquiries, but I wanted to just show this slide. So hard inquiries and soft inquiries here. All right, so I talked a little bit a few minutes ago just about how a hard inquiry, shopping for credit, can have a negative impact on your credit score. There's a way to minimize that impact though. So if you are shopping for a car, and let's say you go to dealer A in June, you go to dealer B in July, you go to dealer C in August, and each time you ask them to run your credit to find out what sort of rate you can get on a car loan. What's going to happen on your credit report is that there's going to be an inquiry that shows up in June, an inquiry that shows up in July, and an inquiry that shows up in August. Now, let's say instead you bundle or bunch all of those requests for a rate for a car loan. So you go to dealership A the first week of June, dealership B the second weekend in June, and dealership C the third weekend in June. What the credit reporting agencies are going to understand is, oh, this person's shopping for a car loan because you've gone to 3 car dealerships in a really short period of time. And the time period is typically a month. So you want to do this bunching in a month period. And so instead of that showing up as 3 separate inquiries, according to the credit scoring models, it's going to show up as 1 inquiry because you're shopping for 1 type of loan product. I should be clear, though, that this bunching really only works out if you're shopping for 1 type of loan at a time. So if you then in that same month start shopping for a mortgage or some other type of financing, you interrupt that bunching, and then that will then have a more significant impact on your credit score. So when you are shopping around for a loan, it's really important that you do that bunching, that you only ask them to run your credit to provide you a rate once you're getting close to being ready to pull the trigger and make a decision. And you don't want to spread those out over time because each time then you go to get your credit report pulled, it's going to be a little bit lower if you don't do that bunching. All right, so where do you get access to your credit report? So getting access to your credit report, you'll want to go to annualcreditreport.com. There are lots of other sites that say that they will give you access to your credit report, and that may be true, but annualcreditreport.com is the official consumer-focused website where you can get your credit report from Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. And you can do that through the website. You can also call a phone number and request it. Some folks might feel like they have some difficulty accessing their credit reports through the website because what they're going to do is going to ask you some security questions as you go through the process on the website. And you might not remember the answers to those questions, or that might lead to confusion. And so in those instances, if you're not able to get access through the website, there is a form that you can print out and mail to request your report, or you can call the number that we have on the screen. The other thing to note is that if you are in the process of disputing information on your credit report, if you're in the process of disputing information on your credit report, you won't be able to pull your credit report. And Mark, I've got someone who's having some issues with the audio. If you could reach out to that person to work through those issues, that'd be great. So yes, if you're disputing information on your credit report, you won't be able to access your credit report while that dispute is going on. So you'll have to wait until that dispute is resolved. So checking your credit report regularly is really important. There can be lots of errors on credit reports. They don't all contain the same information because not every company reports their information to all 3 credit reporting agencies. Typically, you have access to 3 credit reports, so 1 from each bureau, 1 from Equifax, 1 from Experian, and 1 from TransUnion once a year. And again, I just really want to highlight that checking your credit report is one of the best ways to spot identity theft and to stop it. There is a special provision in Maryland where you can actually retrieve a free credit report from each bureau an additional 3 times a year. So you can actually get 1 from each bureau every quarter, and you have to request that directly from the bureaus to get that copy. But a very important COVID update. During the time, because we're in COVID times and we're in a pretty stressful economic situation right now, you can actually go to Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax once a week now to get your free credit report. And that provision is in place now through April 21st, or April 2021. All right, so I'm about to answer this question: how can we dispute something that's on your credit report? Great question. So what you want to do, hold on, just checking the chat box for questions. So someone's asking which of the 3 credit reporting agencies is the most accurate. And that's a hard question to answer. I believe that Experian is the most often reported to. So they might have the most information on there. And yes, it can be difficult to get through the phone lines and customer service. I would highly recommend that if you would like to work on improving your credit, to work with one of our financial coaches, because they can help you navigate what can be oftentimes a very confusing process. Okay, so disputing information on your credit report. So you want to tell the credit company in writing what information you believe to be inaccurate. And if you can, you should include supporting documents. And we highly recommend that you dispute any errors that are on your credit report. So if there is an address on your credit report that you've never lived at, if there is a misspelling in your name, if they've got the wrong name on there, if there's information that says that you, if it's a trade line or a line of credit that you've never actually opened before, you want to dispute the big things and what seem like little things. And the reason for that is that some of that personal identifying information is actually what they use to pull together a credit report. So we often find that people with very similar names and name spellings, or in families where there is a John Doe Sr. and a John Joe Jr., oftentimes their credit histories will be mixed together on credit reports. So you want to clear that up so the credit report is very reflective of your information and not doesn't contain other errors on it. Oh yeah, and someone's saying correct social but incorrect date of birth. Yeah, those sorts of mistakes happen all the time. And so you want to make sure any error is addressed. You want to identify each item on the report that you're disputing. You want to state the facts. This is not my birth date, or my name is spelled with an E, not an O. And you want to specifically state that you're requesting for that information to be removed, and you want to send it. So there's a couple of ways to submit a dispute. You can do it directly through the credit reporting agency's websites. You can also mail in these letters. And one of the resources that I would recommend for disputing, that has really great information about how to dispute information on credit reports, is the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's website. And in the chat box, I will share their information. So consumerfinance.gov is the website, and you'll find lots of information about how to dispute credit report information there. How long does it take for them to resolve the issue? I believe they have 30 days to assess the situation, refer back to the lender if there's a lender that's associated with the misinformation, to get them to just, provide supporting documentation that you do owe something or that it was late. And if they can't resolve that dispute, they do have to remove it. So it takes usually about 30 days for those disputes to be resolved. All right, so we're going to move on to talking about credit scores now. And I want to be very clear that a credit score is different from your credit report. A credit report is specifically information that's about that it's a report of your credit profile and history. It does not necessarily contain a credit score. So a credit score is like a grade. It's a number based on looking at someone's credit report that represents their ability to pay something back. So the higher your score, the better. The same information is used that's on the credit report. It always comes in a 3-digit number, and it's a way for lenders to sort of efficiently judge creditworthiness. It's a shortcut. Rather than looking at every single line item, they can see a score or a grade essentially, and determine whether or not that score is high enough for the loan product that they're offering you. So why does your credit score matter? Well, your credit score matters because if you need to borrow money or use credit, you'll need to have a high enough credit score to qualify for that loan product. Most of us don't have the cash on hand to purchase a car or a house outright. And so we would need to borrow money to do that. As I mentioned earlier, your credit score is important for things also like renting an apartment or setting car insurance rates. It also determines not just whether or not you have access to a loan product, whether you can get a car loan. It also determines how much that's going to cost you, the interest rate that's associated with your the loan product that you're getting. So the higher your credit score, the lower your interest rate, which means you pay less, which is what we want in the long run. And is it possible to live without credit? Sure. But the process can be a little bit more difficult and or more expensive if you do not have a credit score. And go on to the next slide. So how is a credit score determined? So this is very specific to the FICO, or this is specific to the FICO score, but most credit scores work this way. So there are 5 major categories that determine what your credit score is. So the biggest factor impacting your credit score, 35% of your credit score is determined just by your payment history. This is answering the question, do you pay your bills and do you pay them on time? So whether your ability to pay bills on time has really the largest impact on your credit score. The second largest impact on your credit score is the amount of debt, or what it's better phrased as the available credit to debt ratio. So this one's a little bit harder to explain, but it is really important. When we talk about things like credit cards or lines of credit, what we call revolving credit. So you have a credit card that's got, a $1,000 limit or a $10,000 limit. Lenders really like to see, or the credit scoring models really like to see, that you use only about 30%, ideally much less than 30% of the available line of credit that you have access to. So using a lot of your available credit actually will pull down your credit score. So the amount of debt that you have, the amount of credit that you use on a monthly basis has a significant impact on your credit score. Not as much of an impact, but still important, is the length of your credit history. That's about 15%. So lenders like to see a long history of using credit so that they can look back and see a pattern of success with using credit. And then 10% is split between, or 10% for new credit. So that's really that inquiries piece. So have you taken out a lot of new lines of credit recently? Makes up about 10% of your credit score. So not actually having, if the more credit you've taken out recently, the lower your score would be. And then the mix of credit. So do you have some what we call installment loans, so student loans or a car loan where you are paying that credit back in installments? Do you have revolving credit, like a line of credit that you've been able to use well? So they like to see a mix of different credit that you've been able to use and use successfully. This is the point in which I want to just put a big word of caution out. It's really important not to just open up different lines of credit just so you can try to work the credit score. You want to make sure that the credit that you're taking out, you can use successfully. So that would be where a financial coach could really come into play to help talk through the plan for rebuilding, repairing, boosting your credit score, how that looks for you specifically, because the plan's not going to be the same for everyone. All right, so credit scores range, and they typically range from about 300 to 850, depending on the score. With credit scores about 740 or higher being considered very good or exceptional credit. That's where you get the best interest rates. Fairly good credits in like the 670 to 739 range. And then fair credit or poor credit is typically 580 or lower. So again, you're going to want to try to boost that credit score again, not just so you can get access to lines of credit, but so that when you get those lines of credit, you're paying the least amount possible. So just an example to help us understand the impact of the interest rate that you're offered on how much you actually pay. Here's an example of someone who took out a $2,000 loan for a new laptop. And what you find is that oftentimes if someone has a credit score of 580 or below 580, they're not going to be eligible for a loan at all. And so that's typically where you're not offered a loan, or you're offered something that's really expensive and probably not very much worth it. But even once we do kind of get above that threshold and we're able to take out a $2,000 loan, a personal loan for this laptop, what we notice is that in that lower tier, the 580 to 619, the amount of interest that's going to be paid at that 38% interest rate is over $1,400, which is almost the cost of a whole nother laptop. And so in that instance, it's probably worth just saving and not taking out a line of credit at all, because the interest rate is so high. But what we find is that at the highest tier, and again, these are just examples, so this isn't what you would necessarily find in the marketplace, but this is just for illustration purposes. If you're able to boost your credit score to that higher tier, the fee that you would pay, that 10% interest rate, results in about $323 that you're paying in interest. So again, same laptop, same product, but that interest rate really determines the ultimate cost that you pay. These distinctions in credit score rates or interest rates are even more stark when you talk about really big purchases like car loans or mortgages. And so here we see that even in like the 580, 619 range, where we could get a small personal loan, we're not really eligible for a mortgage loan in these instances. And so for the lowest tier, in this case, a 5.5% interest rate on a $200,000 house, 30-year mortgage, is more than the cost of the house itself. The interest in this instance is $208,000, like more than that, honestly. So that is significantly higher than what of this interest rate at the highest tier, which is 3.9%, would be paying. It's still a lot of money. It's the cost of again, being able to own some or use and own something today that we don't put all the money up front. But you see that there are significant savings, $60,000 to $70,000. All right, so how do you get your credit score? Is it going to be on your credit report? No, typically not. But does your bank know or have your credit score? They might. There's a lot of credit card companies and banks that are now providing real-time regular access to a credit score. I know my credit union, for instance, it's in their app now on my phone. I'm able to check my credit score regularly and see what's changed and why my score is the way that it is. The credit reporting bureaus do have it, but they typically charge for it. We get lots of questions about Credit Karma. A lot of folks using Credit Karma these days. And yes, they have a credit score, but there is a catch. One of the things that just to be wary of with Credit Karma, there's two things. One is their privacy restriction. When you sign up for Credit Karma, you're really signing up that they're allowed to share your information with a lot of different people. I have mint.com listed below. Similar agreements are being made about sort of how they can share your information. So you want to be wary about those. But the other issue with Credit Karma too is that they're going to be pushing a lot of loan products at you. That's how they make their money, is through those loan product advertisements. And those loan products might not be the best thing for you. So two places that we recommend for getting your credit score regularly, if your bank or credit card does not offer them, is a tool called CreditWise, which is from Capital One. So even though it is a Capital One product, it's free. They don't sell any products, and they don't sell your information to anyone. It's purely for educational purposes, and it's really easy to use. The other place to regularly get your credit score is Discover. Actually has a similar product to CreditWise, and that is offering you a FICO score. So you'll get two different scores if you check out both of those sites. All right, so we've talked about this a little bit, but just the benefits of having or utilizing credit, right, is that there are some drawbacks of some of these alternatives. So what will you gain or lose from utilizing credit? Well, if you've got a poor subprime credit score, you're going to use credit, but it's going to be really, really expensive to you. And so some alternatives might be thinking about, well, maybe you'll wait to take out those loans until you've improved your score so you're paying less. The other thing that you can do is also try to pay in cash or try to save up so that you're paying in cash rather than utilizing credit, because it's really expensive to use credit while you have a poor credit score. No credit or poor credit, here are some strategies that we would suggest. Again, we've got coaches that can work with you on figuring out which strategy is best for you. But if you're new to using credit and you really want to minimize the risk by doing a lot of research before you take out credit, you want to also start off borrowing very small, more manageable amounts, think under $1,000. You can try to use a secured or what we call collateral-backed product, so things like a secured credit card or a car loan, and opt for an installment loan where you take out a specific amount of credit that you pay back over time in installments until the balance reaches zero, versus something like revolving credit, like a credit card. And that's because using revolving credit can often get you in the habit of using credit regularly before you've built up those strong habits of tracking and managing your expenses so you can always pay it off in full every time. If you have a thin file or no credit file or other poor credit, again, paying your bill on time and reporting other eligible payments. So we didn't talk about this, but there's a lot of bills that you pay regularly that will not show up on your credit report. And that was a question that we'd gotten earlier. So things like rent, your cell phone bill, your utility bills, medical expenses are bills and debt that you often pay back regularly, but those don't get reported to the credit reporting bureaus until they're delinquent or have been sent to collections typically. So that was a question we had earlier about medical debt and whether or not medical debt was on your credit report. And the answer is yes, but only if it's not in good standing. And it typically takes, I believe it's 6 months now before past due medical debt can actually be allowed to be reported to the credit reporting agencies. Some other options are opting for a credit builder loan. And we always encourage you to pay way more than the minimum monthly requirement, particularly on revolving credit. paying off your credit card in full every month does not hurt your credit score. It helps your credit score. So making sure that you're paying more than minimums required, if you're in a financial position to do so, is a great way to begin building your credit. Just check in the chat box. Great. So just to summarize some of the strategies for maintaining good credit is paying your bills on time all the time. If you're not in a habit of regularly tracking your expenses, keeping a spending plan, that is really, that's the ticket. There's not a whole lot of secret sauce in terms of building your credit, because so much of it is built on how you pay back your credit. Also reducing the amount of debt that you're and prioritizing the right debt to pay off can be really helpful in building and maintaining good credit. Making sure that when you obtain new lines of credit, that you wait several months before taking out more credit again. So spreading out how often someone is pulling your credit score and how often you're taking out loans. Thinking about having a mix of different types of credit, it can be helpful, but again, I would really advise you that if you're new to credit or in a position where you need to rebuild your credit, that you consult with a professional first before you begin taking out more debt. You want to pull your credit report regularly, at least each report from all three bureaus at least once a year, and dispute any inaccurate information. And again, meet with a nonprofit professional if you have any questions or need help. Some really quick tips, and just because we're running a little short on time right now, a couple of quick tips to protect your credit. You can freeze your credit score for free, and to do that, you'll want to visit annualcreditreport.com, and you would need to reach out to all three bureaus to freeze it at all three bureaus. That'll help protect against identity theft. What it means is that no one's allowed to pull or look at your credit report without getting permission specifically from you first, and there's additional security questions that will need to be answered in order to do that. The other thing to do is sign up for the Do Not Call registry and to visit optoutprescreen.com. Signing up for the Do Not Call registry helps to prevent robocalls. If your phone number changes or you move locations, you don't want telemarketers calling and people using your information potentially to sign up for things that you don't want. And opt-out pre-screen prevents you from getting those pre-approved credit card offers in the mail. Those can be pretty risky actually to be sitting around in your mailbox. And then make sure you're checking your report and not just your score. Your report builds your score. So you want to be wary of offers that are about you checking your score. You often have to pay for those, but you also want to make sure you're just doing a thorough review of your full report once a year, at least. All right, so before we move into just answering a few more of your questions that you have, I want to make sure I tell you about our financial coaching program. Our financial coaching program is free. It's fact-based. It's in partnership with an organization called Neighborhood Trust that we've partnered with. They don't sell any products. There's no products that are offered through it. We're both nonprofit agencies with a mission to help support people in their financial well-being. They can help you with money management, creating a budget, building, repairing, establishing credit, figuring out repayment plans. If you need help evaluating financial products or loan products, reviewing the terms and conditions, they can help you with that. And they can also help you come up with a savings plan. Again, the program is called, is in partnership with Trust Plus. The program's 100% virtual, so you would meet with your coach over the phone or Skype wherever you are, and it's available in English and Spanish. There's a handy app that you can download to get started. And you can also visit this web. You can download this app by texting the code CASHMD to the phone number on the screen, and it'll prompt you to download an app. And then the app allows you to schedule an appointment, usually within the next week, with a financial coach that can help review your personal information. I'm just gonna take off the presentation just for a second so I can pull up the link to also fill out the intake form if you're not interested or able to download the app. Oh, it looks like I don't have it available. What we'll do is we will share out in an email, the link in the follow-up email to this presentation, the link to signing up for financial coaching. I apologize, I don't have that available right now, that link. All right, so let's see what questions people have right now. Oh, okay, and it looks like Mark was able to post it, the link. Oh, actually, Mark, that's not the full link with the code. So we'll email it out as well, just to make sure that everybody has what they need. All right, so someone has a question. How many different lines of credit should you open before getting a mortgage? Oh, that's a tricky question, Michelle. It really depends on where you're starting. You shouldn't open up lines of credit just to qualify for a mortgage. There might be other ways to boost your credit score. So it does, again, it really depends on where you're starting. But if you're just starting out, we do recommend starting with one line of credit, visiting your local bank or credit union and inquiring about a secured credit card, which is where you put down usually a couple of $100s. They put that in a savings account for you. And then they, in exchange, give you what they call a secured credit card. And it's secured because they've got that money sitting in a savings account if you aren't able to pay back the amount that you borrow on it. You'll use that secured credit card just like you would a regular credit card over several months. They'll report your activity and on-time payments to the credit reporting agencies, and that'll start building your credit. It's really important to keep in mind that the limits on that credit are going to be relatively low. It's going to be like $300, $500. And you still are going to want to follow the principles of building and maintaining good credit, which include only using 30% of that available line of credit. So maybe $75, maybe $100 every month. And you're going to want to pay that back on time every time. Once you've been successful using that secured credit card, you often will be given the opportunity to graduate into an unsecured credit card. Someone's asking how long it takes to build your credit. That is a really good question. It again depends on where you're starting, but people can often start seeing improvements in just a couple of months, 3 to 6 months, if they start paying. Getting delinquent accounts in good standing actually has a really significant impact on helping boost your credit. So again, it depends on the challenges that you're starting with, or if you're brand new to using credit and have no score at all. I'm sorry, these are such general responses, but it really, and I'm saying it depends a lot, but it does. It's really important to get some personalized advice on what to do about your specific situation. One of the first things that the Trust Plus coach will do with you is pull your credit report and go over it with you and give you some suggestions about how to start building your credit. If you pay your bills on time, do you get points every month, points on your credit score? Paying your bill on time every time, typically, what it does is maintain a good credit score. If you're starting from a position where you don't have a credit score, you don't have a lot of history with credit, it can start building your credit score and helping it go up. If you have strong credit already, you're probably not going to see a whole lot of movement. They just want you to keep paying those bills on time every month. So you don't get necessarily, again, it depends on where you're starting. And then someone's asking, says, yeah, so if you're starting with no credit, you'll start to see a credit profile emerge relatively soon. And then as there's more history and more diversity of the types of accounts, but typically people can see improvements in 6 months to a year to help get them to a place where they're in good credit standing. And then it usually takes a few, at that point, it often kind of times can take another year or two to actually get in that prime credit score tier, just because credit history does play, and how long you've used credit does have an impact on your credit score. Other questions folks have about credit? Again, we have been recording this presentation, and so we will send out a link to the recording, a link to the slides. We will also send out a link to sign up for financial coaching if you're interested. And so you can look out for that later today. And if you have any questions, you are welcome to email us. I'm going to drop Mark's email in the chat if you have any questions about the presentation or have difficulty signing up. Mark can help you through that process. Someone's asking if you co-sign, is that bad? Ooh, that is a good question. So if you co-sign on a loan, is that bad for you? Again, that is a very personalized decision and it depends. The really big thing to know about co-signing on a loan is that you are making yourself personally responsible for how that credit is repaid. So you should think very deeply and very carefully about whether or not that is a risk that you are willing to assume. If that is, yeah, you are also liable for that debt, and how that debt gets repaid or not repaid impacts on your credit score. So I will say it's very risky to co-sign on loans, and you should be willing to and able to step in and make those payments on time if the person who you're co-signing for is no longer able to. All right, well, we are going to end it there. Hope that you guys will sign up for financial coaching soon. Check out our other financial education programs that we've got going on the rest of this month. And feel free to let us know if you have any other questions or comments or concerns. We'd be happy to talk about your personal situations or connect you with one of our coaches that can really work with you for as long as you need, for as long as you want to get your credit score where you want it to be. We're going to sign off now and wish everyone a great day. Thanks.